shortly. Yeah, just pull up things this side. All right, good day, everyone. And as always, I'd like to start off by thanking all of you for joining us today for what is sure to be a fantastic virtual exploration through the incredible lowland and montane forest habitats of Peninsular Malaysia and Borneo. Before we get into it, just a quick mention, and you will have already noticed this, but Nikki is not around. She's been away in South Africa for a much-deserved break with her family, and she's flying back to Mauritius today, so she's not going to be joining us for this one. Right, on to Malaysia and Borneo. In my mind, this destination is right up there with about as exotic as it gets for travel, and especially birding and wildlife viewing, with just an incredible variety of species on the potential to see list. Like India, our featured Dream Destination webinar a few weeks ago, Malaysia was one of the first Asian destinations that I had the good fortune of exploring. And I recall many early mornings wandering the trails and the road network up on Fraser's Hill and being simply blown away by the likes of fire-tufted barbets and silver-eared mesia and long-tailed broadbill and the like. Indeed, some of our most favorite birding and mammal highlights have come from the rainforests of Taman Negara and the Danum Valley and Mount Kinabalu and the Kinabatangan River. All these exotic names at the moment for those of you who have not been before, but Nigel is going to get stuck into all of those a little bit later, and they'll certainly be a little bit more familiar, and you'll be able to relate some of the fantastic birds and mammals to some of these names as well. The birds are truly exceptional, but as mentioned as well, the mammals are also a big feature on our tours to Borneo, and typically we see in excess of about 40 different species, which is quite remarkable given the sort of rainforest habitat that largely dominates in the area. As I'm sure most of you are aware, Malaysia has been closed up tightly to tourism during COVID, but the good news is that the country's recently opened again and travel is back on the cards. So yeah, I know a few people that are heading out there fairly soon. We've actually got a tour starting there fairly shortly as well, a private trip. But joining us today is, as our guest speaker, is one of Rock Jumper's most popular and well-traveled tour leaders, Nigel Redman. Nigel needs little introduction to most of our regular viewers, given that this is now his 5th webinar, having featured Finland, Norway, Thailand, Georgia and Armenia, and Ethiopia in months gone by. A quick reminder that all our previous webinars are housed on our website and can easily be viewed by going to the media tab and then just selecting webinars from the drop-down menu. Nigel is one of our global leaders and has led birding tours to over 80 countries across the globe. These days, he's most often found leading tours through Africa, Asia, Australasia, and the polar regions, where he often spends stints of 2 to 3 months at a time. And Nigel's traveled extensively through Southeast Asia, and these forests are among some of his favorite places to bird and search for mammals. And I know that Nigel has a fabulous presentation laid out for us today. Just on that note, Nigel and I were catching up a bit earlier, and he was mentioning his first trip out to Borneo was in 1987, which is a few years ago now, and it was certainly a very, very different place back then. It was, well, an interesting chat, and I actually hope to chat to Nigel a little bit more about that. It was certainly well before my first trips out there. But yeah, as always, we love to field your questions, so please send those through to us in the Q&A box or on the chat, and I'll be having a Q&A session with Nigel at the end. So on that note, it's time to sit back, relax, enjoy our virtual tour to the beautiful forests of Malaysia and Borneo. Nigel, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Keith, for that very nice introduction. Indeed, I'm going to talk to you today about Malaysia and Borneo, which are 2 of the most fabulous destinations. In fact, it's incredible that we've done more than 50 webinars now, and yet Malaysia and Borneo has not featured until today. So we'll rectify that straight away, and I'm going to get on and show you some wonderful birds and mammals too, and even a few other things as well. So we'll look at where these places are. So this is a map of Southeast Asia, or the southern part of it. We've got the mainland of Southeast Asia up at the top here, which is Thailand and Cambodia and Vietnam. And then you've got Malaysia. This peninsula coming down here is the Malay Peninsula. The northern part of the Malay Peninsula actually belongs to Thailand, and then the Malaysia, or West Malaysia, is this part of the peninsula here. But Malaysia also has two states on the island of Borneo. And this is the island of Borneo here. And it has the two states of Sarawak and Sabah, which is the sort of more or less the whole part, the northern part of Borneo. And the rest of Borneo belongs to Indonesia, apart from the little tiny state of Brunei. Just for the rest of the geography, you've got Sumatra here, you've got Java here, and Bali there, and then there's Sulawesi here. Now, these big islands here, Borneo and Java and Sumatra and Bali, are normally called the Greater Sundas. The Greater Sundas sometimes include Sulawesi, but zoogeographically, Sulawesi is not really part of the Greater Sundas, and that's because of Wallace's line. You can see on this little map here, Wallace, Alfred Russel Wallace, back in the 19th century, he determined that there was a significant change in the zoogeography, in the birds and the mammals and the plants, either side of this line, where Asia effectively sort of stopped and Australasia began. And so you've got whole families of birds like bulbuls and so on, which get, and in fact most of the babblers, which get down as far as Wallace's line in great profusion, but they don't get very much beyond it. And then coming the other way, you've got whistlers and georgines and so on, which are truly Australasian, and only one or two of those species have crossed Wallace's line into the rest of Asia. So it's a very important line, Wallace's line. There are deviations and different versions of it, but that's the basic one. So this map here shows the Greater Sundas. So I'm going to concentrate today on Peninsular Malaysia, which is this bit here, and the northern part of Borneo. In fact, Sabah is really what I'm going to be talking about today. So let's just move on. This is the only text, so we'll just get on with this. But this is Malaysia in brief. So what is Malaysia and Borneo? Extensive tracts of lowland and montane forest. It's got fabulous beaches as well, but we won't see many of those on our tour. It really is a rainforest tour. The country is divided into two, as I've just explained, separated by the South China Sea, the peninsula, and then Borneo bit. Borneo is the third largest island in the world. That's after Greenland and New Guinea, and Madagascar comes in fourth. And I've also mentioned already about being shared with Indonesia and Brunei. The highest peak on here, which is in Sabah, in the northern part of Borneo, is Mount Kinabalu, which we do visit. And that's the highest mountain between the Himalayas and New Guinea. Now, the thorny question of endemics. Well, there are, it depends on your taxonomy, obviously. If you follow the latest IOC list, there are 55 endemics on Borneo. You can see up to 45 of those on our regular Malaysia-Borneo tour, just in Sabah. You probably won't get all 45, but potentially you could see 45. There are 5 more that you could see. If you saw all those 45, you could get 5 more on the Sarawak Kalimantan tour that we do. And then there are 5 endemics which are effectively ungettable for various reasons, either exceedingly rare. There's one that was that the black Rail-babbler, which went missing for 170 years and has finally been found in the last few years, but that's way down in the south of Borneo, and we don't go there. So there are 5 species which are not really gettable for various reasons. There are only 4 endemics, in contrast, on the Malay Peninsula, 3 galliforms and a whistling thrush. And I've got photographs of the galliforms, but not the whistling thrush. And the reason for that is that a lot of the birds on the Malay Peninsula creep up into Thailand, or they're shared with Sumatra. The Malay Peninsula has a lot of affinities with Sumatra, which is only a very short distance away. So not many endemics actually on the peninsula, but if you take it the Greater Sunda region as a whole, then there are a whole bunch more, because there's a lot of things that are just found in the Sundas, or the Sundas plus the Malay Peninsula. So on our tour, we will get to some photographs soon. There are 300 to 350 species are possible on a 19-day tour. Very few shorebirds and almost no boreal migrants, because we generally do these tours around about June, July, August time. It's a good time for seeing the birds in that part of the world, and you don't get bogged down with boreal migrants. And as Keith said, 40 to 50 species of mammal, including orangutan, and 24 species of squirrel are possible on the main tour. I've never seen more than 20 on a single tour, but 24 species are possible. It's a good tour for squirrels. And then on top of all that, it's got a rich cultural mix with Malay, Chinese, and Indian influences, and of course tribal people on Borneo as well. And then a fabulous cuisine and great accommodations. So what's not to like? So Kuala Lumpur is the capital of Malaysia, and that's in the peninsula. This is a very modern city. We don't spend much time in Kuala Lumpur. Not so many birds actually there in this kind of habitat. So we will concentrate on forest, and this is just a photograph of lowland rainforest in Taman Negara, which we'll come to later on. So let's just have another look at a map. This is the map of the peninsula again. So this bit here is Sumatra. See how close it is here. Singapore lies at the bottom of the peninsula. It's an independent country. It's very built up and not so many birds. And all these islands here, the Riau archipelago, belong to Indonesia. So this is Malaysia, West Malaysia, or the Peninsular Malaysia. We start off in Kuala Lumpur, which is where that blue dot is there. We go down to Kuala Selangor, which is on the coast, where there's some mangroves and general sort of open habitats and a few good species there. Then up to Fraser's Hill, which is here, which is there's a chain of mountains that comes down through Malaysia here. And you get sort of not really montane, it's more sub-montane forest here. And it's all about altitude. Different birds occur at different altitudes in this part of the world. But an awful lot of species are lowland specialists. And the lowland forest is around Taman Negara, which is one of the largest tracts of lowland forest that is still remaining. So that's a great area to go. There are higher bits in Taman Negara, but they're not generally accessible or not easily accessible. So those are the main sites, Fraser's Hill and Taman Negara especially, and then we do Kuala Selangor. We also go to another little hill station, sort of just in this sort of area here, which is actually where I'm going to start. So let's start with a bang. One of the best birds on the whole tour is mountain peacock pheasant. This is almost mythical. No one ever used to see this bird. They used to say that it could be seen at Fraser's Hill, but boy, was it a hard bird to see. I might have had a glimpse of it once when I was crawling around on my own at Fraser's Hill many years ago. But Bukit Tinggi, which is a little hill station, not all that far from Kuala Lumpur. We went up there. We go up there now on our tours, and there's a place at the top there where if you just hang around fairly quietly, a mountain peacock pheasant just comes out and shows himself. And we spent an hour there on my last tour, and it came out 5 times. What a bird! I mean, that's a cracking bird. It is one of the endemics. The other endemics are Malaysian peacock pheasant and Malaysian partridge, the 3 galliforms, and the whistling thrush. But it's a good start to the tour. While you're there, other birds in the forest could include orange-breasted trogon. There's a male on the left and a female on the right here. It's one of the slightly smaller than most of the other trogons, and it's a fairly widespread species. Always lovely to see. Trogons are very special birds. Then moving away from that little hill station where the mountain peacock pheasant is, we go down to the coast at Kuala Selangor. There's a nature park there, which is as good for lots of general more open country species, for some of the commoner species of Malaysia. It's also got mangroves, so you can see a few species that are specialists to mangroves. Malaysian pied fantail is quite a widespread species, 3 species of fantail. This one is the one that you find in the more open habitats and also in mangroves. The other 2 species are more in forest. A good variety of sunbirds, of course. There's plenty of sunbirds. Brown-throated is again a fairly open country species. There are quite a few other sunbirds. Copper-throated is a bit more special. This bird is very coastal. It's very much a coastal species, not not strictly in, not only in mangroves, but does very much hug the coasts of both the peninsula and around Borneo. So this is copper-throated sunbird. The golden-bellied gerygony, also known as a fly eater, or used to be so. This is an Australasian family of little warblers, and this is the only species, as I said earlier, to have crossed Wallace's line. So this one is in Peninsular Malaysia, goes all the way up to Thailand as well. So it's golden-bellied gerygony, very much a mangrove specialist in this part of the world. Kingfishers, always nice to see kingfishers. Stork-billed, it's a fairly widespread species in southern Asia. Quite a large kingfisher, often likes the coastal habitats or riverine habitats, but not exclusively. A collared kingfisher, also around us. So this is a very widespread species, many different races of that around Asia, and one of them even getting into Arabia, coastal Arabia. So that's a collared kingfisher. Woodpeckers, plenty of woodpeckers. I don't have so many photographs of woodpeckers, but there are plenty of woodpeckers to see and enjoy. Greater flameback is a really stunning woodpecker. There are several species of flameback. Some of them have got 3 toes, and some of them have got 4 toes. And those are in different genera. The greater flameback is quite a widespread species, easily identified by having this double black lines on the malar, as opposed to just a thick line. So that's the greater flameback. Mangrove pitta, it's possible at Kuala Selangor. It's not been easy in recent years. I'm not sure that the recent tours have seen them there. It certainly used to be at Kuala Selangor, and I actually took this photograph in Thailand, but I just put it in to illustrate that it's a bird that is possible in the mangroves at Kuala Selangor, and pittas are a big feature of this tour, but require a bit of luck. Then moving on up into Fraser's Hill. I found I didn't have many habitat photographs of Fraser's Hill, so I've slung in this map. And Fraser's Hill is what they call a hill resort. It's an area that's a little bit higher in altitude, and it's a place where people could go to escape the heat of the lowlands. Today, there's a golf course there and various other facilities, 1 or 2 hotels, but it's basically, there's a little network of roads that run around through these hills. So there's a lot of fancy houses that belong to sort of rich Malaysian people. As I said, a few hotels. And the great thing about it is that you can go there and you can walk around these roads, which are very quiet, very little traffic. There's a few nature trails as well, and you can see a whole host of birds. And here you can get montane type birds or submontane birds, and they're very different species from the ones that we'll see later on in places like Taman Negara. So Fraser's Hill is a great spot. This is habitat photo. It's forest, hilly forest, and it's wonderful as far as the eye can see, in fact. So there's a huge number of species to choose from to show you, and I was blessed with really quite a lot of photographs taken mostly by our various leaders, the rock jumper leaders, over many years. Mountain imperial pigeon, it's one of many pigeons that you can see on the tour. It's one of the big ones, the imperial pigeons. Mountain is this one here, and then the green imperial is the sort of lowland equivalent. It's a big pigeon, you hear it a lot. And sometimes you see it quite well too. And then there are other green pigeons and so on, and fruit doves, but they're harder to see, and I don't have so many photographs of those. But straight away, even in the hotel car park, you start picking up some of the special things here. Like this is a chestnut-capped laughing thrush. This is probably the most common of the laughing thrushes around Fraser's Hill, and you see this in small parties. And the fabulous silver-eared mesia also goes round in small parties. Keith mentioned this species. I mean, it's a fantastic bird. It's found more widely throughout Southeast Asia, but it's always a treat to see. It's just a stunning bird. A variety of sunbirds, different sunbirds up in these slightly higher altitude areas. This is a black-throated sunbird. I always think it's a rather disingenuous name for a bird that is really rather gorgeous. I mean, it does have a black throat, but there's a lot more to it than that. And then a spider hunter. Spider hunters, there are eight or nine species of spider hunters in Southeast Asia. We'll see quite a few actually on this tour. In fact, it's possible to see almost all of the spider hunters on the tour. And some of them are very special. Streaked is one of the bigger ones, and it's there's only really it's one of the more frequent ones, and it's in the some montane areas. More of the spider hunters are in lowland areas, but it's a stunning bird with a great long bill. And actually, in this photograph, you can see the very tip of the bill is actually its tongue sticking out of the bill, rather than it having a pale tip to the bill. Barbets. Barbets can be a bit frustrating. There are loads of barbets, and they can be very hard to see. You hear them all the time. And there's a number of species of them, and we'll get quite a lot. We'll certainly hear quite a lot, and we will eventually see quite a few. So Fraser's Hill black-browed barbet is one of the regular ones we see and hear quite a lot at Fraser's Hill, and many of the barbets that we see they're variations on a theme. Most of them are green. You get small green ones, and you get bigger green ones, and you get a huge one as well. Sometimes it's called the Great Himalayan Barbet further north. But most of them are like this, small to medium sized, mostly green with bits of blue, black, red, yellow in different places around the head. But this one, this is a stunner. This is fire tufted barbet, and this sort of kind of breaks the rules really. It's got a black stripe on its bill. It's got this big tuft on it above its bill, and it's a very different looking barbet. And it's got an extraordinary insect-like call, and you hear this all the time around Fraser's Hill. And we should get some views of them too. But fire tufted barbet is a wonderful barbet. Trogons, a few trogons. Well, most of the big variety of trogons are around, but most of them are in the lowland areas. Red-headed trogon is a montane, a higher submontane bird. Here we've got a female on the left and a male on the right. Red-headed is a fairly widespread one, goes up all the way up through Southeast Asia, up as far as Nepal, in fact, in the Himalayas. But a gorgeous bird. If you're lucky, you might get a bay woodpecker. It's a fairly secretive, mainly brown woodpecker with some barring, but this big pale yellowish or horn-coloured bill. And the fabulous Sultan Tit. This breaks all the rules in the tit family. Many of the tits are on variations on a theme, but the Sultan Tit is just this black and glorious yellow with this incredible crest. And this is a bird that's not uncommon. We'll usually find that 2 or 3 times around Fraser's Hill, sometimes in small groups. Bee-eaters are always a joy. Red-bearded bee-eater is one of the special birds to find in the Malay Peninsula, and around Fraser's Hill, it's possibly more easy to see a little bit lower down. We work the area around Fraser's Hill where most of the hotels are and the accommodations, but you can drive down to get to some lower levels, and red-bearded is probably an easier bird to find there. It's a place called the Gap, which is a good birding spot. The little collared owlet is largely a diurnal owl. There are a number of owls to see on the trip, but the collared owlet, you hear it calling quite frequently during the daytime, and if you're lucky, you can see one as well. And it's a glorious little owlet. Hornbills, several species are possible. We'll see more in Borneo, but the great hornbill is the biggest one on the peninsula. When you get to Borneo, we've got helmeted and rhinoceros to look for, as well as various medium-sized ones. But the great hornbill, it's a fairly widespread species, but it is definitely one of the more spectacular ones. Mammals are always good to see, and there's a lot of mammals on this tour, as I've already said. Squirrels, 24 species of squirrel. Well, this is black giant squirrel. This is one of the biggest. This is a pair of black giant squirrels, a fantastic squirrel, really huge. and very, very striking and quite easy to see. Monkeys, a variety of monkeys that we can see. This is a dusky leaf monkey. It's actually a youngster. And they have these wonderful eye rings around the eyes. Very striking face pattern. This is quite a young one. But we should see small groups of these as well. Southern pig-tailed macaque. Macaques, quite a few species of macaque in Asia. This is the alpha male of a troop that we saw. It was a troop that was 20 or 30 strong that were just hanging around on the roadside, and this was the alpha male. It looks like it's on a garden lawn, but it's not. It's just on some low vegetation, grassy vegetation on the edge of the road. That's pig-tailed macaque. And then the lovely siamang. This is a kind of gibbon. We see several gibbons on the trip. The siamang is an all-black gibbon, and it's got the most fantastic song calls, and you hear them a lot. And if you're lucky, we can get some views of them as well. But their sounds are so very typical. You hear them in various places. But Fraser's Hill is a good place to try for siamang. So there are small birds as well. Small birds go around in parties. There are lots of babblers. I'm not going to feature too many of them. There are lots of bulbuls. And a lot of these birds go around in either single species groups or in mixed species flocks. And at Fraser's Hill, one of the common birds is mountain fulvetta. It's brown. Most of the fulvettas have these dark eye stripe, supercilium. And bits of grey around the face or whatever, but this is the mountain fulvetta, and it's a common bird at Fraser's Hill. A little less common, but we'll probably see it several times. Is the unbelievably beautiful golden babbler. This breaks the rules as well, because most of the babblers are black or white, black and grey and brown, but the golden babbler is a real stunner. And then mixed in with some of these little feeding parties, might pick up one or two chestnut crown warblers. This is sort of closely related to Philoscopus warblers. So they used to be in the Cicercus genus. So it's chestnut crowned warbler, beautiful little warbler. It's got a bit of everything on that one. Flycatchers, also well represented. Large niltava. It's a fairly widespread flycatcher, beautiful blue flycatcher with the iridescent patches on it, the male, the female are largely brown, but it's a beautiful flycatcher, one of the bigger ones. But there's a whole host of flycatchers to see on the tour, large and small. Laughing thrushes, as I showed you the common one already, which was the chestnut crowned. But the black laughing thrush is a really special one that can be seen around Fraser's Hill, and also the Malayan laughing thrush is another one that's less common, but we should pick up that as well while we're there. So laughing thrushes are very typically Asian, an Asian group, and many species, but these are the good ones at Fraser's Hill. And other small babblers, more skulking things now, buff-breasted babbler. Not the most exciting bird, but it's quite difficult to see. It's a bit of a skulker, keeps low down, and another one that falls into that category is streaked wren babbler. Wren babblers are very special. There are quite a few different wren babblers. This is probably one of the best tours in the world to see wren babblers. You could get 7 or 8 species of wren babbler, but wren babblers these days have been divided up a bit now. So the wren babblers, what used to be all in a single family, are now in 3 different families. But this is the streaked wren babbler, taken at Fraser's Hill. White-tailed robin. It's the chats. The robins and chats are a wonderful group. White-tailed is a very shy bird. Loves dark gullies and forest undergrowth. But sometimes, if you're lucky, they'll come out into the open. And there are 1 or 2 places around Fraser's Hill which have become established as sort of like feeding stations where you can actually see the birds a little bit more easily. Rufous-browed flycatcher, one of the smaller flycatchers. Again, it's an understory flycatcher, keeps quite low down, and usually solitary, or possibly in pairs, and it's sort of closely related to the white gorgeted flycatcher further north up the peninsula. I call this a pygmy cupwing. It's actually, I used to be called a pygmy wren-babbler, but because it's been put in a different family, they're now been renamed cupwings. And there's good reason for that. They've got very short rounded wings, and when they stretch their wings, they do actually look quite cup shaped, I suppose. But these are tiny little tailless birds with long, strong legs, and they're pretty hard to see. You hear them a lot, but they're hard to see. But sometimes you can get some good views. It's a beautiful little bird. Another really hard bird to see is the lesser shortwing. These are chats, small members of the robin chat family. Lesser shortwing. This is a male, and this one is a female. But it's not always quite that simple. There are some races where the males don't turn blue like that, and they're just brown all the time. But it's a bird we will be here a lot and become very familiar, but we'll have to put in a bit of effort to actually see it, and to see it as well as that. So these are lesser shortwings. And nuthatches. Well, nuthatches are a fairly widespread group, but this has to be perhaps the best nuthatch in the world. It's truly is a stunner. It's not uncommon either as well, and it can be seen around Fraser's Hill, sometimes with feeding parties, maybe sometimes on its own. But it's an absolutely gorgeous nuthatch, the blue nuthatch. It's about as far south as nuthatches get, actually. And then broadbills. Everyone likes broadbills. Pittas of broadbills are always sort of top favorites, and this tour delivers on broadbills. So you can see long-tailed broadbill relatively easily around Fraser's Hill. You could also get the silver-breasted broadbill. I didn't put a photograph of that in. That's also possible at Fraser's Hill, but long-tailed is pretty likely. It's a stunning bird with green plumage in its blue tails, and often in small groups. And then getting into the really hard stuff now, Malaysian partridge. This used to be a mythical species. This is a bird you'd only ever hear, but now there's a place at Fraser's Hill where you can go. It's a fairly quiet road, and you get up to the top of the road, and if you're lucky, these little partridges will come out of the forest onto the side of the road. Not them. There are 7 that sit in that photograph, but there were 7 birds that came out of the forest, and just on the side of the road, and giving us absolutely amazing views. And that's also one of the endemics, and it's used to be a really tough one to see, but a little bit easier at Fraser's Hill now. And then a bit lower down at the gap I mentioned, it's a little bit lower altitude than sort of more submontane areas. Marbled wren-babblers, one of the real special birds to get. It's a very, very hard bird to see, but there are spots where they can be found, and it's a marvelous wren-babbler. It's quite a big wren-babbler, much bigger than the pygmy, and a truly, truly beautiful bird. And this is another really tough bird, the rusty-naped pitta. Again, it can be heard around Fraser's Hill, on the little trails, but seeing one requires quite a lot of luck or persistence. This is a great photograph from Rob Williams, but you can't see one of its features is it's quite greenish, quite dark greenish on the back, that you can only just see there. It's not one of the brightest pittas, but it's quite big, and it's all pittas are special. And then another really good bird that you could pick up on the forest trails, I've only seen it a couple of times, is ferruginous partridge. It's a gorgeous partridge, really beautiful, and it could be seen down at the gap, or even on one of the other trails if you're lucky. But these birds do require a bit of luck. So moving away from Fraser's Hill, let's moving on now to Tamanagara. And Tamanagara is the largest national park in Malaysia, in the peninsula. It's mostly lowland forest, and it's a fantastic reserve. We'll spend a few days here. So there's a little town was built up. This is Kuala Tahan. You can see on the far side of the river there. This photograph was taken from the park itself. This town didn't even exist the first time I went to Taman Negara. It's a new town that's grown up, but it does mean that you can actually drive all the way there now. It saves having to have a 3-hour boat trip to even get to the park. So this is Taman Negara. It's looking downstream down the Tembeling River, Kuala Tahan, and there's now a very nice lodge, Taman Negara Lodge, very comfortable lodge. It's got good chalets, nice gardens, birds in the gardens, and birds in the forest. There's some good trails, lots of good trails. There's even a boardwalk. There's also a canopy walkway. There's riverine forest. On the right there, just wonderful bracket fungi on a fallen tree. And this is just a fantastic place. Canopy walkway. There's another canopy walkway at Danam Valley as well. And the canopy walkway gives a chance to get up high, and see some of these canopy birds at eye level. Also, we'll do a boat trip on the river. Boat trip's a good way to sort of get up to some different places. You can see things flying across and on the river edge. It's quite low at this time of year, the water, but you can get a little way up. So many new birds for us here. A lot of pigeons and doves. Common emerald dove. This is actually a very common species, the emerald dove, but it's a beautiful little bird. Often you'll see it flashing through the forest or crossing the road or something at high speed. But when you actually see one on the ground like that, it's wonderful. The Asian fairy bluebird, and again, it's quite a widespread species. Beautiful bird. There's a male there in the front and the female behind. It's a fantastic bird. Black-necked monarch is another fairly common widespread species. This one's on its nest. This is a male. Beautiful flycatcher. There's a bunch of flower peckers to be seen. Crimson-breasted is a lowland specialist that you can see in Taman Negara quite easily, and there's several other species of flower peckers too. Flycatchers, we've already touched on those. This is a rufous-chested. This is a resident species, lowland resident species, and it looks quite similar to Mugi-Maki flycatcher, which is quite an uncommon boreal migrant that comes down from Siberia, from eastern Siberia. Bunch of babblers, many babblers. A lot of them go around in groups. This one is not. This one is more solitary, goes around singly or maybe in pairs, and it likes walking around on the forest floor quite a lot. And in fact, it disturbs the leaf litter. So when you hear of the leaf litter being disturbed, I mean, you think you always check it out, because it could be a thrush, it could be a pitta, or it could be a black-cap babbler. That's quite often what it is. And then you've got a good variety of babblers. I've just put 4 together here: short-tailed, black-throated, chestnut-winged, and grey-headed. These are all quite common, but babblers are quite skulking. Many of them are fairly hard to see. Sometimes they go around just in small family groups, sometimes in bigger mixed flocks. But lots of fun to be had with babblers. Malkoas are kinds of cuckoos, and again, several species to be found. We've got chestnut-breasted here and raffles malkoa here, both reasonably frequently seen. Kind of thrush, long-tailed thrush, very popular cage bird, sadly. But the white rump charmer, which is the most widespread, most common species, is still pretty easy to see. It's a forest species, beautiful song, and we'll certainly come across this. This is a much harder bird to see, a rufous-tailed charmer. Certainly a much harder bird to see, but it's present as well at Taman Negara, and it's also on Borneo. So we've got more chances of 2 chances of that one too. Forktails, little group of Asian forktails are in the chat family, and they like rivers. The white-crowned is perhaps the species that is least attached to rivers, or at least it will inhabit really very small forest streams rather than big rivers. Anyway, there's 2 species to be seen in Tamanagarra, the white-crowned and the chestnut-naped. Broadbills again, let's go back to broadbills. There's several species of broadbills. The dusky is one of the large ones. It's not one of the more colourful species, but you can see the huge broad bill, how it gets its name on these birds. This is a pair. And then the black and yellow broadbill, gorgeous one with a blue bill. It's a lowland species. The banded broadbill, perhaps one of the commoner ones, really. It's a lovely bird, also with a blue bill, and we'll hear these birds quite a lot. And this is a black and red broadbill too. But the best of the lot, green broadbill. Green broadbill is a stunning bird. It's absolutely iridescent green. We'll certainly hear this, and we should see a few as well. Wonderful bird, green broadbill. Kingfishers also. Banded kingfisher is a forest kingfisher. This does occur on Borneo, but the one on Borneo, instead of having these rufous cheeks, it has black cheeks and is sometimes considered to be a separate species. And then the lovely rufous collared kingfisher, also another forest species, quite a shy bird, but one that we could easily run into at Tamanagarra. The crested jay is a strange bird. It used to be in the crow family, but it's now in its own family. It's a very strange bird with a very interesting, strange call, but it's very shy. Even when you hear it call, you think you'll see it, but it will do its best to stay hidden. But with a bit of luck, we'll see one. So that's the crested jay with an extraordinary crest. Pittas, well, there's some always good pittas. The garnet pitta is probably the one that you will hear most frequently in Tamanagarra, and we'll make a bit of an effort to try and see one too. It's a gorgeous bird. There's a very similar species that occurs on Borneo that looks like a bit like this, but it doesn't have the red on the crown. So this is garnet pitta. And then the Malayan banded pitta. This is one of the best of the lot. Really stunning bird. And this is frequently seen not far around from the lodge in Tamanagarra. There's another banded pitta on Borneo, Bornean banded pitta. So we've got a species against a recent split. So there's another species of banded pitta that we could see on the tour as well at Down Valley. And then the magnificent rail-babbler. This is a tough one. Again, you probably will hear it, but whether it'll come in is a different matter. We'll try hard for it. It's an extraordinary bird. It is one of the real special birds to see, and Tamanagarra is usually quite a good place to look for it. Owls, well, we'll try for some owls. Thunder Scops owl, we'll hear that at night and probably find it at night, but you might find a day roosting one like this one. Likewise, barred eagle owl is there. Not often seen, but sometimes you can run into one in the daytime like this. Brown hawk owl, that's a bit more likely to be seen. This is obviously taken at night. So this is a fairly widespread and fairly common species, the brown hawk owl. And then frogmouths also. Frogmouth is a Gould's frogmouth. That's one of the smaller ones. Can find that at night around the lodge at Tamanagarra, or large frogmouth is the real special one. We actually picked that up on our last tour there. This is a little family party. This was taken at night. And then this is what they look like during the day. They just look like a bunch of dried leaves. It's the same little group, but this is taken after it got light. And you can see the youngster is in the middle there. You've got the 2 adults on either side. So that's large frogmouth, an extraordinary bird. And this occurs also on Borneo too. Mammals, this is the lesser mouse deer, or lesser oriental chevrotain as it's also called. A little tiny forest deer that creeps through around the forest. And then the Gibbon, is the gibbon that we often hear there. And then one of the squirrels, the three-striped ground squirrel, one of the many squirrels. I just threw this one in. I didn't put too many squirrel photographs in. And then pheasants. All pheasants are always special. The crested fireback, now sometimes considered to be two different species. So this is the Malay version of the crested fireback, which you can see very close to the lodge at Taman Negara. If you're lucky, it goes around in little coveys, little groups. And then the Malaysian peacock pheasant is a really special bird that sometimes comes into one of the hides close to the lodge at Taman Negara. The Malaysian peacock pheasant can be a very shy bird. So moving on to Borneo. So at Borneo, we always fly into Kota Kinabalu, which is the capital of Sabah. And then we drive up to Mount Kinabalu, which is up here, the big mountain. So for montane forest birds. Then we head over to Sepilok. Sepilok, Sandakan is just on the coast there. So that's a sort of one of the bigger towns. And Sepilok is a small lowland forest reserve that's got a few good species. And then we go down to the Kinabatangan River. And the Kinabatangan River is I'll come to that shortly, but it's an area where which we largely work by boat, from boats. We just spend a good day there going up and down the river looking for a few special birds. And then we'll finish the tour really at Danam Valley, which is a fabulous area of lowland rainforest. And then we fly out from Lahad Datu back to Kota Kinabalu. So basically it's Kinabalu and Danam Valley, montane and lowland. So Kota Kinabalu, there's a nice little flock, a nice little colony of night herons in the town that we will go by and have a look at. They're mostly black-crowned, but there's a few of these Nankeen night herons amongst them, which is rather nice. It's an Australasian species that we can pick up. And the problem with Borneo is this is oil palms, and so much of the forests, so much of almost the whole of Borneo was once covered with lowland rainforest, but with rainforest, but a lot of it's been converted to oil palms now, and it's very depressing to drive through miles and miles and miles of oil palms, but this is what they look like. This is just a little fruit market near Mount Kinabalu. Just to remind you, lots of wonderful fruits, which are quite unfamiliar to those of us who live in temperate regions. So this is a view of Mount Kinabalu, 4,095 meters high, taken from the park headquarters area. And the park headquarters has got various buildings and accommodations and a restaurant and various places. And also there's a fairly good road that runs around, and you can walk along the roads and gives access to easy birding in the forest from these roads. And there's a few trails as well, so the trails are pretty good. They're quite a little bit narrow sometimes, but well worth doing. So this is what we do. We don't actually climb the mountain itself. You have to. It's a 2-day trek to climb it. It is very climbable, but it takes 2 days, and you need a local guide, and we don't really have the time for that, and there's nothing really up there to see that's different. So this is just a view from pretty much the highest point that we get to. That's a view across the forest on Mount Kinabalu, and it's just wonderful forest. So some of the endemics, this is Bornean tree pie, quite common species to see around the headquarters area. And this Bornean green magpie, there are several species of green magpie as a common widespread one, which we could have seen at Fraser's Hill, and probably did see at Fraser's Hill, but I didn't show you a photograph. This is the Bornean green magpie, which you can see around the headquarters area. The Bornean whistling thrush, quite shy, but often seen on the roadsides in the early morning. Or if you creep around in the forest, you might come across one as well. That's the Bornean whistling thrush. The golden-naped barbet, there's 3 endemic barbets, all of them on can be seen around Kinabalu. The most frequent is the golden naped. There's also a mountain and a Bornean. Both of those are less common than this one. And then there are other species, more widespread species also around. So a few barbets to look for. More flower peckers. This is black-sided. This is pretty much endemic to Borneo. And the scarlet-backed is a widespread species, but the form on Borneo, which this is, has a black throat. So it's a bit different. It's only a racial difference. So that's scarlet-backed flower pecker. Sunbird, several sunbirds. This is Temminck's. This is a stunning sunbird that we see fairly easily on Kinabalu. More laughing thrushes. This is Sunda laughing thrush. Not one of the more spectacular looking ones, but it's an endemic. Chestnut hooded also is endemic, quite similar to the chestnut crown that I showed you at Fraser's Hill, and in fact it's a recent split. Mountain leaf warblers, probably one of the commoner passerines that goes around in little groups, often in mixed species flocks. Will often include several mountain leaf warblers, and we'll hear its song quite frequently. And another component of these little flocks of this is the chestnut-crested euhena. Euhenas are a little subfamily of, well, I'm not sure what they are these days. I think they used to be included in the babblers, but they're in their own family these days. So chestnut-crested euhena. Indigo flycatcher, another endemic flycatcher, a montane species, quite common around Kinabalu. And eyebrow jungle flycatcher, also a special bird at Kinabalu. Much shyer. Need to sort of get inside the forest trails to see this one. Babblers, there's a few different babblers. The grey-throated babbler is reasonably easy to find, and the yellow-breasted warbler, fairly widespread species of warbler. It's closely related to the chestnut crown that I showed you earlier from Fraser's Hill. And another endemic, the Bornean whistler. It's another. Whistlers are Australian family, like the Georgines, and it's just 2 or 3 species have crossed Wallace's line, and this is one of them, Bornean whistler. Sunda bush warbler, bit of a skulker, but it's in the Chettier family, and you hear it quite a lot, and we should see that one as well. So Sunda bush warbler, but this is a much harder warbler to get to grips with, the Bornean stubtail. And you can see that it looks almost tailless. It's got a really, really short tail, but it's a gorgeous bird with a stonking eyebrow, and it's a real speciality. And we'll make some special efforts to try to see this one. It's a migrant bird that breeds up in eastern Siberia. Winter as far as Borneo, but you can see it gets down into Thailand in winter, breeds in Siberia. So, but this is a Bornean stubtail, which is endemic to Borneo. And then shortwing, we saw lesser shortwing before. This is white-browed shortwing, a bit bigger than the lesser. Similar kind of thing, where the males are generally blue and the females are brown, and they have this little eyebrow, which can be made bigger depending if they get excited. They can sort of raise their feathers, and then that little eyebrow becomes a huge great white eyebrow when they're excited. It's a real skulker. We'll hear it, and we'll try hard and hopefully see it as well. And the white-browed shortwings actually could end up as several different species in the future. So, but at the moment, it's just white-browed. Swiftlets, another difficult group. Quite a lot of different swiftlets. Some of them not very easy to identify. This one is a Bornean swiftlet, which is endemic, but it's incredibly similar to the glossy swiftlet, or it used to be called cave swiftlet or lynchy swiftlet. And this one's supposedly identified by having a greenish gloss rather than blue. That does look a bit greenish blue to me, but anyway, Bornean swiftlet, difficult group. Back to game birds, partridges. Crimson-headed partridge is a stunning endemic partridge that you can find on Mount Kinabalu. A really, really gorgeous bird. crimson-headed partridge. Of course, like all partridges, quite shy, but sometimes we see it. And the other endemic partridge is red-breasted. That's also a beautiful bird, red-breasted partridge. Mountain wren-babbler, that's an endemic wren-babbler on Kinabalu. Can be tricky to see, but we usually do. And then plants, some wonderful plants on Kinabalu, pitcher plants. There are 170 species, I think, of pitcher plants in the world, and about 40 of them, I think, are on Borneo, and over 30 of those are endemic to Borneo. So on the left, you've got fairly sort of standard pitcher plants. There's quite a few species that look like that. One on the right is Raja pitcher plant, Nepenthes raja, and it's found on Kinabalu, and it's one of the big ones. It can hold 2 liters of water. It's pretty big, and insects and things, and even birds and mice will get trapped in there, and then the bird will die. Will feed on them, sort of digest them really. So these are pitcher plants, really magnificent things. And then the other magnificent plant that you can sometimes find, but it's pretty difficult, it's quite a rare thing, is Rafflesia. So this is a plant named after Sir Stamford Raffles, who was a British, he was founded, I think he founded Singapore. He also conquered Java, but he's got a few things named after him. He had that Malcoa named after him, and he's also got these wonderful flowers. Now, these are the biggest flowers in the world. There are 28 species, I think, of Rafflesia. This is one of the biggest ones. The flower is a meter across, and I think they weigh 10 kilos, the flower. And you don't see, they are parasitic, so you don't see any other part of the plant there. The rest of it is below ground or inside other plants. But they flower for quite a short time. You can sometimes find the buds, or you can find them when the flowers are over, but they'll only be in flower for a few days at a time. And they're quite localized, but sometimes we're lucky, and it's a magnificent plant to see. And then the gibbon, Bornean gibbon is the endemic gibbon that you can find on Kinabalu. Beautiful little gibbon. Everett's thrush, that's a tough one. Real skulking thrush. Best chance of that is early mornings on Mount Kinabalu, just on the edge of the road or on the edge of a trail. Sometimes you can see that there. That's Everett's thrush. The fruit hunter, that's another tough one. It's used to be thought to be it used to be called a triller, black-breasted triller, but it's now considered to be a member of the thrush family. It's a big thrush-like bird, but it's strange. Some years you don't see any at all. Other years there might be several, and Kinabalu is the best place to look for them. But we don't always see it, but it's a beautiful bird. So that's the fruit hunter. And then, as people mentioned, the Whitehead's trio. John Whitehead was a British person who did a lot of exploration in Borneo back in the 19th century. And he's got 3 lovely birds named after him. So this is the Whitehead spiderhunter, endemic. These are all endemic birds to Borneo. Whitehead spiderhunter, beautiful bird on Kinabalu. The Whitehead's trogon. This is actually an immature male. The adult males are redder than that, but they all have the grey breast. That's Whitehead's trogon. And then the Whitehead's broadbill, which is like a large sort of overgrown version of the green broadbill, but it's got more black scaling on the upper parts, and it's got a black on the throat as well. It's a beautiful broadbill. Can be a hard one to find, but it's around the headquarters area on Kinabalu. The Kinabatangan River is this wonderful river which we explore by boat. It looks wonderful forest, but sadly the forest is really just a short, narrow strip of forest on either side of the river, which they've left, which is good, but you haven't got to go very far into that forest before you just find solid oil palms, which is very sad. But you can still see some good birds there. The Oriental dollar bird there's a widespread species that perches up on snags. The blue-throated bee-eaters, also fairly widespread. You see them perching around on the edge of the river. The green imperial pigeon is the lowland equivalent of the mountain that we saw earlier. Hornbill is one of the smaller hornbills, the oriental pied hornbill, quite a common species. And the whiskered tree swift. Tree swift's a family of only 4 species. The whiskered tree swift is a stunning looking bird. Great slaty woodpecker, it's the largest of the Asian woodpeckers, great big woodpecker. Not just here, it could be seen at Dannon Valley or Tamanagara. The blue-eared kingfisher, quite a widespread kingfisher that you see from along the riverbanks, and the buffy fish owl. We found this one during the daytime, but we often see that at night on night trips. Hooded pitta, it's another pitta that you could see along the Kinabatangan River. But one of the species that we really go there for most is the storm stork. Storm stork is a very uncommon forest-loving stork, and the Kinabatangan River and its tributaries are a reliable place to find it. If you're lucky, you see it perched, but you're probably more likely to see one flying over like this. And this is a bird that I've actually never seen, but it's is seen along the Kinabatangan River now, the Bornean Ground Cuckoo. It's an extraordinary bird, and very shy, quite hard to see, but it is being seen a lot more regularly these days, the Bornean Ground Cuckoo. So that's one of the top things to see. You can see saltwater crocodiles resting along the edge. There are plenty of those. And then the mammals, Proboscis monkey. This is the other main reason for going down the Kinabatangan River. Fantastic looking monkeys, a male on the left and a female on the right with a youngster. In Bahasa, local language, I believe that the local name for this monkey translates as Dutchman because of the big noses. And they really do have big noses, the monkeys, I mean. Another good mammal that we saw on our last trip is binturong. It's only the second time I'd ever seen one. It's a kind of civet, great long whiskers on it as well. And it was just feeding in this fruit tree together with a variety of hornbills and even an orangutan. But the binturong is this enormous all-brown civet, arboreal civet. Gomontong caves, that's a place we just make a short visit to. Huge caves that are home to millions of bats and swiftlets. It's very stinky inside, but there's walkways these days to walk around. You can walk in a boardwalk, so you don't have to walk on the droppings of the bats and swiftlets. And there's a whole host of things to see. If you hang around on the outside of the cave, you might see a bat hawk. The bat hawks come out at dusk and they feed on the bats as they emerge at night. Bushy crested hornbills, these also try and catch birds or even mice around the edge of the cave, which is, I don't know if that's their normal diet or not, but the ones there do. But these are bushy crested hornbills. Inside the caves, you've got various species of swiftlet. This is the edible nest swiftlet, which is you can see that it's got this edible nest there. This is made of saliva, and that's what they collect to the Chinese people like to eat in soup. So when they have bird's nest soup, it's made of these nests of the edible nest swiftlet. Another species there you get is the black nest swiftlet, but that one mixes feathers in with its saliva. So that's a lower grade nest for the bird's nest soup, the black nest. The edible nest is the top grade. And then if you look down on the floor, all these cockroaches and cave centipedes and all sorts of creepy crawlies. So it's quite good to be on the boardwalk, really, because that's what the ground looks like. And then finally, Borneo Rainforest Lodge in Danam Valley. Wonderful, wonderful lodge. This is one of the top lodges in Asia. Really luxurious, fabulous location. You've got all sorts of things there. You've even got orangutans in the garden sometimes. So that's the view from the lodge. There's a small river that runs alongside there, and the garden goes right down to that. You've got wonderful forest all around you. Fabulous place. So that's a view of the lodge and the river. So white crowned charmer, that's an endemic charmer, very similar to the white rump we saw earlier, but this one's got a white crown. You've got fluffy back tit babbler, that's a different kind of babbler, one of the special babblers. You've got Horsfield's babbler, that's another one of the babblers that you can see there. Striped wren babbler is a wonderful wren babbler, very distinctive one with a pale face and white underparts. Orange-bellied flowerpecker is a different flowerpecker. Pygmy white-eye, another tricky bird, very small, unimpressive-looking bird, but it's a Bornean endemic and can be quite hard to find. Hornbills, Rhinoceros hornbill, that's got to be one of the best of the lot, and it's still quite common. We still see quite a few of those. Still, you can see them in the peninsula, Tamanagara too, of course, but they're really quite easy to see at Danum Valley. And helmeted hornbill, one of the biggest of the lot with a very long tail, extraordinary bird, becoming much less common nowadays, unfortunately. Butterflies, there's lots of wonderful insects in Borneo. I've not had time to show you many insects, but this is Raja Brooks birdwing, which is a magnificent butterfly, huge butterfly, which you see floating through the forest. Raja Brooks birdwing. Squirrels, this is the smallest of the squirrels, the least pygmy squirrel. It's tiny. There's also another one called Whitehead's pygmy squirrel, which is like this, but it's got ear tufts. And that's found higher up. But the least pygmy, or used to be called plain pygmy, is a minute squirrel. This is unusual as well. They usually see this at night if you're going to see it. It's a flying lemur, or these days called a Colugo, a Malayan flying lemur. There's only 2 species of flying lemurs. The other one's on the Philippines. And this one we just found during the daytime in the garden of the lodge. If you do a night drive, see other cats possible, but leopard cat is a small spotty cat, gorgeous little cat. But I say if you are really lucky, you might see marbled cat or clouded leopard, leopard cat, or a flat-headed cat. But leopard cat is probably the more easy to see. Bearded pig. This was just close to the lodge too. These live in the forest, and they come out onto the edge sometimes. Often go around in small groups. Bearded pig, and the pygmy elephants. You see their droppings a lot, and sometimes you see the animals themselves. So these are pygmy elephants that are quite common in Danum Valley. This is a western tarsier, tiny primate. If you did a nocturnal drive, you might be lucky and see one of these. Not easy. Extraordinary toes that it's got. And then the pheasants. This is the Bornean crested fireback. The Bornean crested fireback is similar to the Malaysian one that we saw earlier, but doesn't have the white spots on the wings, and this one's got a chestnut belly. And if you were really lucky, you'd see a great argus. Great argus. We hear these a lot in Tamanagara too, but seeing one is tricky. You need a lot of luck to see one, but sometimes you do. But it's a wonderful bird. It's enormous, an enormous pheasant. You'll certainly hear it. And then the Bornean Bristlehead. The Bornean Bristlehead is an endemic family. This bird they didn't know what it was for a long time, but it's now a family of its own. It's thought it was a bit shrike-like or something, but it's a bristlehead family. It's the only species in the world. It's a gorgeous bird, and it goes around in small groups in the canopy or lower canopy, and we nearly always see it. It's one of the special birds to see. Pittas. I shall sort of finish with pittas. Blue-banded pittas, one of my favorite pittas. There's not such a great photo of it there, so I just put in a painting that was done by Martin Woodcock, and this is going to appear on the front cover of the new edition of Pittas and Broadbills that's going to come out next year. So that's what it looks like. It's a fantastic bird, and you need a bit of luck to see that one. The black crowned is more likely. This is the bit that like the garnet pitta that we saw at Tamanagara, but this one doesn't have a red crown. It just has a black on the crown. And this one we'll hear quite frequently, and with luck we'll see it. And then the other endemic is this one, which is blue-headed pitta. Wonderful, wonderful bird. And that's also moderately common around Danum Valley as well. And I mentioned about orangutans. Well, finally, here is one. This was taken in the garden of the lodge, right in the garden at the top of a big tree. There's orangutan, is a slightly closer view. And it's a magnificent animal. It's one of the highlights of a trip to Borneo for sure. So I'm always asked about the books to take. So here you've got a selection of books, bird books. So Borneo is covered in the Birds of the Indonesian Archipelago here, which is a fantastic book, but that only covers Borneo. This one only covers Borneo. This one covers covers Malaysia and Singapore only. This one just covers Borneo. This one covers everything. So that is probably the best one to take on the tour if you only wanted to take a single book. But the others are all good as well. This top one is a Lynx Editions book, and it's pretty good. It's taxonomy. It's a bit strict, so things are sort of not. You don't always find that the birds that are most like each other are not always on the same page, but it's a pretty good book. Mammal books. There are 3 to choose from here. You've got a Mammals of Southeast Asia, which covers the peninsula, and you've got 2 books on the mammals of Borneo, and they're both good. They're both excellent. In fact, they've got many of the same illustrations, the Borneo one. So that's good. And I would like to thank all the rock jumper leaders who supplied photos and a few other friends which were credited. I didn't mention bulbuls. So you've got a cream-vented bulbul here. There are a host of bulbuls to be seen on the tour, but they're not particularly exciting looking, so I didn't show many. This is a Bornean form of the cream-vented. And another endemic is Dusky Munia. It's the only endemic that's found in the open, really. It's quite common, but no one ever photographs it. And the only photograph I could find was this juvenile. And but it's just brown. It's a little Munia that's all brown, and it's endemic to Borneo, but in the open areas. And that's where I'll finish. Thank you for watching.
Fantastic, Nigel. That was a real trip down memory lane to some degree for me. I haven't looked at some of those Malaysian Bornean type birds for a while. So it is incredible when you see a whole highlight reel like that, just the volume of like mind-blowing birds, just, you know, colorful family, spectacular species. And then you throw in all those mammals and the beautiful locations as well. It's quite the trip. I think you did very, very well in actually keeping that to just over an hour, because you could have easily doubled the photographs and we'd probably still all be sitting here with our mouths open. There's a fantastic amount of feedback coming in. Certainly a lot of folks that have enjoyed your presentation a lot. We'll send those to you afterwards, but just one, yeah, I mean, Cassia mentions, thanks, Nigel, brought back wonderful memories, one of our best birding trips ever. I can highly recommend this area for the variety of fauna and flora, great accommodation and food, ticks all the boxes. I think it pretty much sums it up to perfection. So yeah, let's go into some Q&A here. The first question was about the books. So you already sorted that one out. Thank you.
Somebody always asks about the books.
Absolutely.
So absolutely. I thought I'd get it out of the way, really, and show the pictures. But yeah.
Yeah, which is absolutely perfect. Good stuff. So first one, Catherine's just asking here about the cupwing. She says it looks quite a lot like South American ant pittas. Any relationship of sorts?
No, they're not related. They're completely different families. But yes, there is a similarity, and I guess they are occupying a similar kind of niche. So perhaps that's convergent evolution. But yeah, they're small terrestrial skulking birds. Yeah,
absolutely. And then just a question also around the little birds. So a lot of the little babblers and whatnot, and some of the warblers. Just asking about whether they're in sort of the upper elevation of forest, mid elevation, or low elevation, or is it very much a combination of all of those?
Most of the babblers are actually lower elevation. Some of them are quite truly terrestrial, like the black cap babbler. Lots of them inhabit the lower strata, sometimes very low, lower or mid. There aren't so many that go up into the canopy. So it's lower and mid elevation really for the babblers. And often in small parties, small feeding parties. Not many of them are solitary, really.
Absolutely. And then another sort of standard question in many ways. What's the temperature and weather conditions like for the trip?
It's quite a warm, humid place. In the lowlands, we're talking about temperatures in the late 20s or early 30s. So it's pretty warm and quite humid. Obviously, when you get to the higher elevations, that drops off a bit, and especially in the early mornings. So somewhere like Mount Kinabalu, it can be almost chilly first thing in the morning, but it'll heat up quite nicely during the rest of the day. But yeah, in the lowlands, it's fairly humid and pretty warm.
Yeah, absolutely,
and fairly consistent throughout the year as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I've found that as well. And then elevation on Mount Kinabalu, what sort of elevation do we typically get to? I mean, I know you said that, the top's obviously over 4,000 meters.
Just trying to remember what it is now. It's around about 2,000.
Yeah, I think it's.
I
seem to recall that being about right. Yeah, 1.8 to 2 is my sort of memory on it. Yeah,
I think it's around about 2,000 meters or so for that area. I'm just wondering if I'd written it down somewhere, but so it's a bit cooler. You can climb up to the top. You used to be able to climb up to go beyond. There's a sort of a gateway at about the park headquarters at about 2,000 meters or whatever, and the path goes beyond that. But you now cannot go beyond that path, beyond that gateway up towards the summit, unless you've got a guide. But you used to be able to just wander up there on your own. There's only one bird up there that you cannot see lower down, and that's the Kinabalu friendly warbler, or the friendly bush warbler as it's just called these days, which is an endemic, and I've seen it several times, but I've never seen it around the park headquarters area, and so that is the one thing that you actually do need to go higher for.
Yeah, it's true. Myself also. You seem to have to get past that and then start the climb up there. And once you're in that area, it can be pretty friendly, as the name suggests.
Oh yes, oh absolutely, yes. But there's actually nothing else that you can't see lower down, really. Everything else you can see lower.
Yeah, 300%. Harris is asking, have you ever had Malayan tapir on your Malaysia trips?
I have actually. I've had it a couple of times at Taman Negara.
Yes.
There's a hide called the kumbang hide.